Hey there and welcome back to another Win or Lose video. And today we're going to be talking about episode 3, Raspberry. This show's been really fun to watch, and by the end of episode 2, I think I was pretty much hooked on it. This episode and the fourth one though, it takes it to the next level. It's some full-on Pixar magic and really showcases the whole concept of what they were trying to do with the shifting perspectives and how the point of view character impacts the way in which you view the story. After all, this episode, framed from the mind of a child, really goes out of its way to paint the mum as somewhat lacking. A typical influencer mum who only cares about herself and has left her daughter to pick up the slack and become a grown-up before her time. Then you get to the other side of things in Pickle, and everything changes. Oh, this show is so good. I really hope it's getting good viewership because it would be sad to see them stop taking chances and making cool stuff like this. Okay, so this episode follows the character of Rochelle, who's been a pretty important figure in the first 2 episodes, being best friends with the coach's daughter Laurie, and also being a big character in Frank's episode 2. Now, we get her point of view of the week before the big game, starting on the morning of the playoff match. We start off with a montage that kind of sets up the dynamic between Rochelle and her mum Vanessa, at least from Rochelle's point of view. Rochelle's up and ready to go when the alarm goes off. She's bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, and is the one who's seemingly keeping things on track, helping her mum get ready while she's still tired and bleary-eyed, feeding her baby brother, and even feeding her mum. With her mum then swooping in afterwards to make it seem like she was the one who's Miss Go on social media. In reality though, it's Roshi that's keeping her mum on track, and while she's setting timelines for when they need to leave, her mum's doing dances for TikTok and forgetting to go to the bathroom before they leave the house. So automatically, you skew towards thinking that this mum sort of sucks, as she's self-absorbed and selfish. The type of social media mumfluencer that you see talked about on horror story Reddit posts and whose children are almost certainly going to cut them off and need therapy when they become adults. They head off towards the softball field rather early in the day so that Roshi can start her job working at the snack shack in hopes of getting that last $60 that she needs to pay off her softball dues for the next season. Seems to be a bit early to be getting the dues though, doesn't it? I mean, this season isn't even over yet. I figured that they'd handle all of that much closer to the start of the next season, wouldn't they? Then again, I've never played softball, so I wouldn't really know. One of the big visual motifs in this episode is when Roshi has to play the role of adult. Visually, we see her start to grow and put on a classic power suit, which I found to be very clever. Once again, like with Frank's armor in the previous episode, we're getting those visual clues as to how a character's feeling and what their inner emotions might be, despite what they're projecting on the outside. Roshi, using tips I guess, manages to gather up $60 across her shift, which gets her to her overall goal just as the game's about to begin. In the game itself, it seems like she's a star player. We see her hit a home run, accurately predict how potential hits are going to go, allowing her team to get into position, and then she manages to get the last runner out, which wins the match for their team. What I liked about this sequence is that once again, we get a more realistic perspective about how the game goes. In Laurie's episode, it feels like her going for the catch and falling down only to be saved by Kai happens over a long period of time. It's the same with Frank and him calling out on the final play, where he runs around to make his calls and takes a while to think about it when Roshi gets the runner. Here though, he doesn't actually move, we see that. His call is instant. Laurie's trip and fall lasts half a second and then it just moves on. I really enjoyed that showcase of how time can move differently based on your own point of view and what's happening to you. So she has her big moment and she turns to her mum to get some praise, only for mum to be on her phone taking a selfie or doing a video or whatever. A massive mood killer. I know the next episode tries to give Vanessa a sympathetic side, but no matter what, this has to be a big fat parenting fail, right? Damn. Missing your daughter orchestrating the winning play to get her team into the championship game is just poor form. On top of that, later on after the game where they're having their cool down talk with the coach, Roshi notices her cleats are at the end of their lifespan, and that once again her mum's off doing her own thing, although this time I think it is the first major POV divergence, where there's a different side to the story that's very reasonable. Regardless though, she still has to play the role of parent, which is kind of sad. At the meeting, Roshi learns that the softball dues are going up to $1,600, from what I presume was previously just $1,000. To me, this is an absurd amount of money to play a sport, a youth sport. But when I tried to have a look online, apparently there's something called travel ball, which seems to be when your baseball/softball team frequently travels long distances to play games or tournaments. So I guess that's why it's so expensive. And I get it, but it is still crazy to me regardless. That being said though, giving them such late notice of only about a week that it's going to get that much more expensive? That's wild. Come on, coach, you got to be better than that. Also, that little kid giving us a warning about the chicken? Figured it was a bit at first with the kid just being a weirdo, but the episode really does hone in on the chicken mascot over the course of the episode. It was only on my rewatch that I even noticed that the girl who tries to steal the corn chips is one of the accomplices later on in the episode, and is also friends with the chicken. I love how they build things slowly up over time like that. On top of this, really enjoyed the shift into almost existential horror that the episode takes whenever Roshi gets upset or anxious. It's the other side of that adult persona. On the outside, she's acting all responsible and in control, like she's her own parent, whilst on the inside, it's like a worst case scenario. Like her life is an actual horror movie and there's no way to escape from it. The world around her warps and shifts and decays. Really cool way to set the tone of the episode and dig down and build sympathy for Roshi. At the same time, it also sets you against Vanessa, as it's upsetting that her negligence is putting her daughter into this frame of mind. This in turn builds up to that big 1-2 punch, where things get flipped on its head next episode. So clever. This of course leaves her in a bit of a pickle though. Roshi now has a $600 difference to make up within a week so she can continue to play. And it seems like she's actually going to try to talk to her mum about her problems for a second, only for her mum to pull out a present and her phone, inside of which is a pair of designer cleats. Now obviously, these shoes would have been extremely expensive, and so Roshi questions her mum about how she even paid for them. She tries to brush her off a few times, talking about how she cut back on certain luxuries, or she cancelled her gym membership, and then she's going to stop online shopping. That's right, this family is seemingly struggling to get by, and mum is still doing online shopping. Nice. Also, I know once again we do get the alternate POV next episode that shows not everything is as it seems, but let's not mince words here. The mum is still not great from this perspective, because it's become very obvious that this child is clearly part of the family budget. She is the one telling her mum that they're going to make it work, and that they always do. Like, come on. What do they call this? Parentification? And so now, with no other alternative, she has to hide the truth about the dues for the team increasing. She has to deal with it herself, and so she gets sucked back into the horror vortex before we shift scenes to the school the next day, with Roshi putting on a brave face for her mum's social media. At school though, it's a different story. There's no brave face. She's spiraling, as after all she can't afford to play. And her having to play the role of parent is starting to wear down on her nerves. She has another one of those breakdowns where her reality starts to warp, only for everything to calm down when she gets an offer from a classmate to give her $50 in exchange for helping him with the homework assignment he didn't do. Now this brings back high school memories. Although, we never asked each other for money. We'd sometimes just write notes excusing absences or missed assignments or homework and give each other the answers at times. You just gotta change the wording so people can't tell. This guy spreads the word all around school, and pretty soon, she has a whole horde of kids lining up in the bathroom begging her for help on homework assignments and tests in exchange for money. Honestly, not a bad business plan if you ask me. Maybe some of it skirts around what is against the rules or not, but you can see that for a lot of them, she's simply giving tips and tricks. She's not actually doing the work herself. Although, for others, I'm pretty sure she straight up does do their homework too. Also, I like that they returned to using the cyberspace characters and animation style they used in Frank's episode, with them this time representing texting and social media conversations. I just like the visual variety here, and it makes it a lot more fun to look at than just having words go on a screen or having a voice line speak out the words of the message instead. Of course, as you would expect, working on so many people's academic performances over the course of 5 days really starts to wear her down, and she's getting extremely exhausted, living off of coffee and working late into the night to do assignments for others. On the flip side though, she's been making bank. She has to earn $600 to make the difference after the softball fee increased, and she's currently down to $200 left. Not too shabby if you ask me, considering it's only been a couple of days of work. Of course, she still has a long way to go. An opportunity comes knocking in the form of that same knucklehead guy who asked her for help at the start and offered her $50. This time, he needs help passing a civics test with Mr. Brown, aka Frank. He needs help in the actual test and is willing to pay $100 to do so. So in the course of a week, this guy is ready to fork out $150. My God! This dude is either a terrible judge of the value of goods and services, or he is loaded as hell with strict parents. This dude alone would have paid for a quarter of the money she needed to make. Now here is where we get the truth of the cheating incident we saw back in Frank's episode with Rochelle and Kai both getting caught passing a note. Turns out this doofus was supposed to sit behind Rochelle and she'd pass him a note. Since he's incompetent, despite walking in with Rochelle, he somehow doesn't manage to sit behind her. And to tell you the truth, I'm starting to see why this guy had to fork out $150 to get help on homework. And so Rochelle ends up having to use Kai to pass the note. Kai doesn't want to, she wears her down, and then boom, they both get caught. We cut to her and her mum talking about the incident, and Rochelle lies about what happened to make herself seem more innocent than she actually is. I really love the next part of this scene, by the way. Vanessa tells her she's quit her job to become a full-time content creator, with Rochelle playing the part of the parent. She has to grow up back into that adult mode character, and their dynamic showcased here is just very funny. The teenager versus the parent, but not in the way that you'd expect. It's just more of that same type of storytelling that aims to skew your perspective and make you think that Vanessa sucks and is a bad/irresponsible parent. What I love though is that moment where Roshi pushes too far and gets slapped down, when she uses her mum's first name instead of saying mum. Everything just shifts. And I loved how when her mum stomps over to yell at her, she slowly reverts from the tall power suit character to being a regular kid again. I love how with the hindsight of the next episode, this whole scene reads so differently. Here it seems Vanessa's just completely trash and only cares that she lost the title of mum, that it's all a vanity thing. The reality though is kind of the opposite. But we'll talk more about that in the next video. I just wanted to mention how well written this whole 2-part collection is. I know I'm banging on about it, but my god, it is just so good. Roshi storms off and decides that to get the last $200, she's going to be selling her shoes and gets a buyer that wants them delivered in person on Saturday before her big game. Take note of the chicken avatar in the virtual world. The day of the game, off she goes, catching a bus to the buyer's house. Truly terrible idea, by the way. Stranger danger. This is how you end up on the news. At the same time though, I like that it shows the effect of incorrect parenting, because Roshi should know better. At the same time though, the only reason she's in this predicament in the first place is because she doesn't feel like she can trust her mum, and that therefore Roshi must know best. She goes off to the meetup without her phone, and the horror vibes are building. Creepy dark street lamps are flickering, guy in a chicken costume just chilling alone, inviting her into the dark house. Yikes. Of course, it turns out this is a party and she is perfectly safe, mostly. She meets up with the chicken and his friends, and it turns out they don't even want the shoes. They actually want her keys to the snack shack that they're going to use to rob the joint in exchange for $200. I'll be honest, for a little bit they had me going. I actually thought they'd have Roshi give up the keys and that this whole episode was going to document her spiral and shame. She refuses though, and she escapes into the street, where these teens chase her in a car. They chase her in a car and almost hit her a couple of times too. This part was actually legitimately unsettling and creepy, but also really mysterious. Yes, the whole chase probably wasn't quite as dramatic as it played out in Roshi's head, but the reality is that she likely was still chased by them in the car. She has a pretty bad fall, and she loses her glasses, scuffs her knee, and loses the keys. On top of that, the chicken's head falls off, but we don't see his face. So is this going to be a big reveal, do you reckon? Or is it intentionally mysterious and just has no real answer? Back at the party where Rochelle escapes, a little boy walks in asking to play Smash, and he distracts the three. That was the little brother of one of the players on the softball team with Roshi, wasn't it? The kid that talks about hot dogs? So is that her house? Oh, there's so many puzzle pieces. I'm very invested, but I'm also very confused. What I've come to learn about the show, though, is that if you give it time to cook, it all comes together. The episode itself actually has a pretty bleak ending, to tell you the truth. After all of this has gone down, Roshi runs off to find help and comes across a payphone. A little blonde kid that had earlier told her to beware the chicken, and who she shouted for a drink at the start of the episode, pays back her kindness by giving her the money for the payphone, which she uses to call her mum. But the episode ends with the phone still ringing out, leaving you to wonder whether Vanessa would even step up for her own kid, or simply let her down again. Man, this episode was so heavy. I came out of it feeling so mad. I guess that's why they dropped it immediately with the mum episode. It sets you up to feel so angry, only to make you question your assumptions and change your perspectives. It's a writing masterclass. The show is so damn good. It's a shame that Pixar's not going to be making any long-form content again like this. I get that they want to focus on feature films, but considering Dream Productions and then this show have been so good, feels like a bit of a tragedy, really. With all that being said, though, that's the end of the episode. These have all been my opinions, and I'd like to hear yours. What did you think of this episode? Did you like it, hate it? I'm curious for your thoughts, so make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and let me know.